Today's episode of Themindhere will be different. On the 24th of February 2022, Russia, under Vladimir Putin, launched an invasion on Ukraine. Normally my comments on current events will go in their own sections, but today they will take place as the front and centerpiece of this episode, and my personal updates will be the side story. Today, for what my voice is worth, I stand in solidarity with the Ukrainian people. I wish everyone affected by this situation, from the Russian populace to the citizens of and within Ukraine, the best of luck and of the best of outcomes. Slava Ukraini. Before the invasion took place, I have to admit that I followed this very little. This has been a common trend, and I've expressed this in my past episodes about how I sort of just brush aside the global news and sort of try to focus on myself and get myself up to working, because everything else has just been a distraction of just constant information that isn't relevant to me and isn't important enough to me. A lot of things that have been going on have just sort of been something that would just detract from my day, and it wouldn't be meaningful in any way. After a week or so, the fact that I spent time worrying about something would likely not be, would have been time wasted. So the lead up to this has been, for me at least, quite sudden, as I haven't been following the situation between these two countries much at all. I've definitely heard of it. It's been an issue that I've been listening to, and it's, for the most part, has been brought up in my game theory class, where we talk about various game theory situations, and of a game where we talk about the hawk and the dove, where you can take the position of being the strong man or the one that wants peace, and how you why different agents, economic agents, rational players would be playing each situation. And so I've heard some of this just from people talking about it who follow this more closely. But once the invasion took place and the news sort of took off, I became much more concerned about it. And the issue is that when I first heard of it, it was shocking, but I knew nothing about the issue. So I did some research, and I've learned a lot about Ukrainian and Russian history these past few days. More than I ever thought I would, given any circumstance, really, since this was not something I imagined. But even now, from the research that I've done, I would still recuse myself from any conversation regarding the specific politics regarded in the conflict at hand. But I don't need to know the specifics to say that an invasion and escalation that we see now is, quite frankly, disgusting and unjustified. There's no benefit to any country for a warfare. So that is something to make clear, that the general situation going on is just terrible. And that is essentially my first reactions to it, and what I've been feeling from the first few moments. The lead up to it, which has been quite sudden for me, and then the following of just some research, but a reminder of that however emotional that you may feel, oftentimes if you are not directly a knowledge subject matter expert or directly affected, that you should probably recuse your opinions of the specifics. But general notions you can still have a justified opinion of. That is where I stand on the issue. Now, following the general trends that I talk about, I've also been, and always have been, quite observant of situations, usually with actually, with any situation, I like to take note of trends and various patterns that I see, and like to update my personal model of how the world works from this. And here are some things that I've noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed or not, but maybe this will be something that you see now that I bring this up to you. The first is, of course, the demonstration of true leadership by the president of Ukraine, Zelensky. He showed tremendous leadership in that he did not abandon his people. Normally, some high-ranking leaders usually would flee the country, and to some degree it may be justified as it may take this person to come back and reinstall order. So this is of a top priority, and people want to rescue him. And that may be even more true when the president has been elected by the people and the people genuinely want to be with him. But the important thing here is that he stayed, and the fact that he stayed is something that is incredibly admirable. The fact that he stayed with his people to fight and he's willing to go down with the ship is something that, frankly, is quite missing in modern politics. You don't really see leaders sacrificing for the people. It's usually the other way around, which is quite sad, unfortunately. Especially the higher up in leadership you go, the less of this admirability you see. But he is an exceptional man, and I praise him for standing with his people. It shows true leadership there. But not only that, from this, what I've noticed is that you really start to see where the true power of politicians really come from. And that's the fact that true power comes from the people, not the individual. The fact that he's staying with the people is important because that's where the true power comes from. Let's say that in a worst case scenario that the government of Ukraine is decapitated, essentially. The Ukrainian people would not stand for it because they elected this person to be their leader. And when someone else from the outside comes in and tries to reinstall a new leader, it's not going to work when the very governing body, the people that you are governing are against it. And you can also see this a little bit from the fact that Russians themselves are protesting the situation. And you can see that they're, especially in nations where the leadership tends to be ruling with an ironclad sense that people are not allowed to speak out against them, you really start to see some of the power break down. Because really, what is a nation? It's a collective of people that are getting together to support something so that they can collectively have a better life. And the leaders that you select are really just a delegation of certain responsibilities so that it may be more efficient that one person is making decisions for a whole bunch of people so that not everyone needs to spend the time discussing something, right? But when this is flipped around to the point where other people start telling you what to do, in this sense, it becomes kind of unstable. And the fact that Ukraine has been able to hold on so long, at least in theory, in my theory, is because of the resilience and in the decentralized nature of where the power comes from and where the support comes from. The man here, Zelensky, has been supported by the people, and so people were willing to come together to fight for and defend their country. Whereas when you have the people invading, these people are not even supported by most of the population back home. So that morale there is going to be devastating. So you can sort of see where the true power comes from, and it sort of starts to make sense when you question what the purpose of government is and why politicians are there in the first place, right? They're there because it's a delegation of certain responsibilities. And of course, now you can see that it's being flipped around where they're using this delegated power for their own advantages. But in reality, that's where the power comes from. It comes from the people. It comes from the people you are governing. You are given permission and you are given the grace of the people to make decisions. But if you start abusing that, then it can very quickly become an unstable situation. And the worst fears of such leaders are the unstable situations and the anger of the people. So that is some things that I can take away from here. And these are some things that can apply elsewhere, where the collective rebel against a certain entity of authority, because ultimately authority is delegated by the collective to achieve something that the collective maybe cannot do on its own, or it can do more efficiently so the collective can do other things. But when that's being abused, the collective can take it back, and will always be able to take it back, because what's the point of ruling over no one, right? Now, thankfully, through all of this, I've been fortunately relatively isolated, as I live in a country that has not really been affected terribly by the back and forth of economic and military retaliations against the offending parties and such. So I've been relatively isolated. But even such, from these repercussions, but even such, there bound to be consequences to the normal people, the general population of 2022, in an era where you would have thought that wars were from a bygone era. And clearly, that's not the case. It's been a wake-up call to many people, and for me, it has been as well. And just from my initial feelings from this, I've noticed that I've been feeling sort of withdrawn and also internally conflicted. And why is that? Some situation that's happening halfway across the globe, essentially on the other side of the globe. How is it affecting me personally, and why is that? Well, part of it I don't even know, but there might be some other factors leading to why I might be feeling withdrawn from what I want to do and my actions. But seeing this development has not been exactly helpful with this aspect, and does lead to further questioning. The fact that you've seen such a stark example of a great leader relative to our current leaders begets questioning about who I am and what person I want to become, right? The president of Ukraine is someone that I praise highly for what he's done so far. But that question's about me. What do I want to do in the future, and where do I want to go? And how am I as a person? What am I doing compared to the people that are suffering from all these tragedies there? That comparison is probably not a fair comparison, as it's not like we get to choose the conflicts that we get into, but it's more of how we respond to it, right? So to say that is probably a little bit unfair, both to me and to the people involved. But it still asks a question, and I've been struggling to answer it. I've been thinking hard about it, and I tend to think a lot about these things because I want to gain the most from these situations, not just a superficial glance at it, accept the consensus, and move on with what I've always been doing. I want to change from tough situations and become a better person. So that is why I'm taking time to ask myself of this, because I've been feeling that I haven't been going where I wanted, and this further asks the question of why and where I want to go, and also how can I help humanity in its current state, right? There are plenty of crises going on, from the geopolitical conflicts that are obviously occurring to the more slow but poisonous ones of mismanagement of global resources, and of just in general this sort of division and hyperpolarity that's been going on. Right, so all of this has been something that has been on my mind, and I've been thinking about. No questions yet, no answers to it yet. And I don't know if I will ever find a satisfactory answer, but sometimes you need to sort of work as you go, and life continues on even if you can't find the answers to this. And so I will continue to improve and look for possible solutions, possible answers, possible directions to head. But in the meantime, just bringing up the questions themselves is important, because answering things is not the only thing that's important. The education system we have right now has been about answering the questions properly, but it's never about asking the proper questions in the first place. And these events here force us to ask questions. Now, sometimes we might be so used to the answering questions regime that we simply don't know what to do and try to answer whatever's given to us. But here we start to really question, why are we still answering these? What questions do I want to go after, right? So this is why I think that's important. And this is how it's been affecting me personally. I've been asking more questions and trying to find the best questions, the right questions, the most effective questions to answer and to go after, and therefore spend the most resources and improve myself in that direction. With that, there's a little bit of an update, a little bit in comparison to what's been going on around the globe, but from my personal development side, it's quite big because it's about my Minecraft plugin, and that's been that I've been finally able to release a pre-release of it, and it now supports more versions. Previously, it only supported one version, or I guess two technically, since it could support 1.16.4 and 1.16.5 Minecraft versions. But now it can support from 1.16.4 all the way to 1.18.1. Supposedly, it's still being bug tested, and I've received a bug report from the server that currently uses it that it's not recognizing certain data. So I need to go back and look at it. But theoretically, it should be able to support these versions now. And this has been quite a big update for me because of what it took from the infrastructure side to get to it. I may have talked about it, but to recap on this, I've had to learn Maven, a dependency management tool for Java, the programming language Java. And I've had to do this because in order to support multiple versions of Minecraft servers, I need to be able to access multiple versions of the Spigot API, the API for accessing all the Minecraft related code to make these plugins happen. And because I need multiple versions of the same API, I can't really depend on jar files, because the same class could have the exact same class name, which is just the location in the different files, but it could be different code based on the different versions, and Java doesn't know the difference there, and rightfully so, because if it has basically the same address but it's a different version, then how are you able to know which one you want to use, right? Java will just simply choose whatever's the first one that comes up and load it for you. So that's not reliable at all. So I needed to learn how to manage these dependencies, and I needed to learn that and learn how to basically reorder my project to do that, how to make different versions for different entities for different versions, and learn how to use interfaces. Here I actually learned why interfaces are so important, because you can use them in version agnostic areas and have, say, like, okay, this interface is will be guaranteed to have these methods to use, but the implementations will then implement how they will be given. So it's a bit more complex, and I probably didn't explain it too well, as I'm still learning about it, but I've been learning a lot about why interfaces are important, why version dependency management is important, and why GitHub is so important. As one of the problems I ran into was that because I was working on this development, this highly developmental area of learning things, I didn't know if this was going to be production code or not. So I kept things off of GitHub, and I really should have been committing a lot and taking the changes and storing it somewhere, but I didn't. I left it all on the local area, and when I screwed up horribly and deleted the entire project file on accident without having it saved, I had a quick panic attack. But then thankfully my IDE had local history I could go back to and refer to, so I was able to avert that disaster. But it was a hard-earned lesson to basically save your changes more. So that's one of my hard-earned lessons from that. And also just the gratefulness of open source code, because without referring to the other plugins that have been able to use the basically they were able to figure out how to use multiple versions, and I didn't. So I looked at them and realized what they were doing, and then I had to learn from it. I didn't copy necessarily the everything that they did and all of that, because frankly the important part here is I'm learning how to do this and become a better programmer. So really copy and pasting has never been my style, and it always felt like not a useful use of my effort, because if I'm just copying and pasting, then why am I doing it in the first place, right? But if I'm learning how to do it, then I'll be able to generalize and apply in the future. That's where the real value comes in. So thankfully for the open source nature of this, I've been able to borrow their implementations, borrow their methods and processes, and learn from it. So thank you to the people that I've been able to, and the plugins that I've looked at for looking at their source code. Thanks to them, I've been able to get this version up. So I'm very proud of the work I've done, and I'm very thankful of that. I've also learned a lot as a developer from this. And going into the future, I guess this will talk about what's going on in the future with the plugin and with my projects in general. I'll be focusing on this, as this is my main priority right now, besides school and academic stuff. But I want to be able to get more customization in, sort of focus on the ability to make this sort of something that's more infrastructural and not just like a specific implementation of how villager defense would work. It's more of something where there's some defaults you can use so that it's easy to set up, but if you want to customize, there's a high degree of customizability. So learning a lot about how to implement customizability. So a lot of that going on, but I'm proud of the work that I've done so far. I look forward to working on it further. So that's where I am at currently, personally. All right, but that will mark the end of this episode. Hopefully next episode will be, it'll be more normal. But only time will tell how it will end up as. But anyways, thank you all so much for the support that you have given me. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to leave them down in the comment section of the YouTube version of this podcast. Thank you all so much for your support. If you think that this episode was something that was interesting, consider liking it. And if you think that these podcast episodes are something that someone else would find interesting or benefit from, then I encourage you to share this with them and open up this community, as it really means a lot to me for you to do so. Anyways, take care, stay humble. This is Theguyhere, out.